your hands top of your head.
Well, I didn't.
Now!
And I'll bet your mother had a loud bark.
Hey, welcome everybody to Morning with the Chief. And I'm not the chief. The chief, retired chief from the LA Sheriff's Department, Pat Jordan. He's off on assignment, so I get the opportunity to fill in for him. I'm retired Sergeant Cliff Yates from the LA Sheriff's Department. I've been retired for over 10 years, and I'm excited for the movie that we're going over today because I have a couple special guests, and the movie is very special to me in a way. It kind of inspired me to want to join a large metropolitan police department. In fact, the NYPD, I ended up taking the test, but I ended up joining the LA Sheriff's Department before I even got my results back. So I want to introduce my guest today, and I'll start with a good friend of mine who's also a retired sergeant from the Milwaukee Police Department, but he's also a writer, and I'll have him tell you a little bit about himself. Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell.
Hey, thanks for having me here today. Yeah, as far as who I am, Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell, retired. I retired in 2020 after 25 years of service for Milwaukee. I was in the city, worked all over the city, did all kinds of fun jobs. And right before I was retiring, I started writing books. And I have published 9 books under my name or different pen names. And I also have a podcast called Cops and Writers. So if you want to find out more about me, I'm exclusively on Amazon for the books, and the podcast is streaming through all the podcast mediums out there. I think I'm on 20 different platforms. So good to be here. And
Great,
seeing
Patrick.
your
Thank
smiling
you.
faces.
Yeah. And I'm also very excited for our other co-host today, because the movie we're reviewing today is Super Cops from 1974, based on 2 real police officers from the NYPD. And we have an actual retired NYPD, I believe, maybe detective, but I'll let him tell you. And he has a lot of insight into this movie. It's going to be exciting. Mr. Vic Ferrari. Vic.
Cliff, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. And thank you, Patrick, for recommending me.
Absolutely. You're a great guest on my show, Vic. So the bar is high. The bar is very high. So don't let us down. No pressure, Vic. No pressure.
Vic, did you retire as a detective or an officer?
I did. I did a 20-year career with the NYPD from 1987 to 2007. I worked in a lot of different units. I was never afraid to kind of throw my hat in and sometimes stupidly raise my hand when they say, who wants to try this? And I'm like, okay. I worked in a DUI unit. I worked in a plainclothes unit. I worked in the narcotics division. In my last 10 years, I was a detective in the NYPD's auto crime division. So anything with chop shops, exporting stolen cars out of the country, changing vehicle identification numbers on stolen cars for resale. I retired after a wonderful 20-year career. I got into writing a series of books like Patrick. I write under my name, Vic Ferrari. And I, too, also have a podcast called NYPD Through the Looking Glass.
Ooh, NYPD Through the Looking Glass. That's fantastic. I think we're going to start with a scene here. The first scene we're going to look at, and, you know, this is a book based on Dave Greenberg, and it's Robert Hance. Did you know of these guys when you came on, Vic? Or
I knew of them. You know, this guys in the NYPD. It's the NYPD has been around so long. It's like if you played for an NFL sports team, if you played for the Houston Oilers, you'd be well aware of Earl Campbell because they would probably have his poster somewhere.
Right.
The NYPD is like that. I knew of them, but they were off the job well over a decade before I came on.
Yeah, they weren't on the job very long at all.
No.
I think we're going to look at the first scene here. I think it's I think I entitled the swearing in. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, it's a
It's just a slideshow. Okay. What happened here is, Vic, I want to ask you about this because what happened was the guy at the academy, he has everybody line up like according to the 5 bureaus, right? Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Manhattan, Queens. And then he has them like, tallest to shortest. Did they actually do that in the academy or?
No. So so you got to realize in this time period, this was during the Vietnam War era.
Yeah.
So they were hiring, there was a hiring freeze, and then they were hiring piecemeal a little at a time. When I was hired, you would be dressed in a business casual or a suit, and they would bring you to some auditorium somewhere. Like I got sworn in with a group of 1,200. So the police academy gym would not work, but that does look like the police academy gym, believe it or not.
Yeah, it does. Look, I was, yeah. So I was wondering because I know you can tell me this. How do they? I know sometimes, I guess, part of the academy they'll split. Like some people go to like the housing authority, or some people go to traffic, or how does that work?
So when the NYPD was split into 3 fractions when I got hired, you had the city police, the transit police, and the housing police.
Yeah.
You all got hired off the same test. So you took one police test, right?
Yeah.
And just before the police academy, you had to go downtown somewhere, and there was a big board with all the names. And you would go and see where you were. So you could either work for city, housing, or transit. But then in the 90s, they merged everybody together.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because I had that in mind. I remember when I was thinking about getting put back on the list, I didn't want to go to the transit, or I wanted to be just NYPD, So you wouldn't have any choice until the 90s, right? You would have been just assigned.
Yeah, and then they made it difficult. So say you were in transit or housing and it was called a rollover. So if you're in transit or housing and you wanted to go to the city, right, you had to take the test all over again. You didn't go through the police academy, but you got assigned an investigator. They made you had to take a physical all over again. So they did it. They didn't want to lose manpower.
Yeah.
Didn't want to lose manpower. The housing didn't want to lose manpower.
I see everybody getting sworn in here. And how about you, Patrick? What size academy did you have? Was it just Milwaukee? Did they have their own academy, or did you have a county academy? Or
No, for the city, they had their own police academy. And it didn't matter if you were a police officer or a sheriff's deputy anywhere else in the state, they didn't recognize that. Even if you were accredited, you were a full-fledged, cop, they didn't care. You had to go through their 6-month academy. You had to learn, quote unquote, their way of doing things. And we were only one of, let's see, the state patrol had their own academy, city of Madison, county sheriffs for Dane County and Milwaukee County. And that was about it. Everybody else went through like vocational school academies.
Right. Yeah.
And this was very, like paramilitary, you're falling in for inspections, you're saluting everything except the fire extinguisher, maybe that too, who knows.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a uniform the first day, and we call them our Cub Scout uniforms. I mean, you look like Mr. Goodwrench with like a police patch on your shirt. And
oh yeah.
We did get sworn in the first day. There was 43 people in my class, which was short because ordinarily there was 60. And that year they pushed through 4 police academies, which was really high speed for them. I mean, it was super busy, but it was 1995 and President Clinton's crime bill financed all this. We were super short of cops, and they were just like hiring like crazy. But when I took the written test, there was about 3,000 or 4,000 people in the auditorium for maybe like 300-400 jobs. If
wow. And Vic, the LAPD, NYPD academies are there was like 2,000 people, or they could be a lot of people, right, in one academy class.
Yeah, I was in what was considered a mid-sized class of 1,200.
Wow. So you broke up into platoons or something like that,
Yes.
I would imagine?
Oh, yeah, companies. So it was each classroom was 30. And then we had a 4 to 12 shift and a day shift.
Wow. That is so crazy. We would hire, our academy class was 120-ish. And then, they might do 4 or 5 through the year, because we did a hiring when we had to hire 1,000 or 2,000 one year. But man, we had small academy classes, and then we had platoons, and we had a class sergeant. It was kind of paramilitary too. They had a lot of Marine stuff. And we started on, and so everybody kind of started civilian. We started in civilian clothes, but we didn't have a uniform right away like you, Patrick. In New York,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was the same, right? Civilian clothes or.
No, believe it or not, we wore a uniform. It was navy blue slacks, a light blue shirt, but I mean it was their shirt. And
Right.
my class was the first one we had to wear these hats. It looked like we worked at McDonald's.
Yeah, yeah. I
Hated
remember those
those
hats.
days. Yeah,
We had baseball hats, so that was
you were
cool.
lucky.
Yeah, that was cool.
Do you know when this movie was 74? Was this prior to? Well, they always talked about the NAP. So this was after Serpico, right?
The movie, yeah, I think Serpico was 72 or 73.
73. Yeah. Okay, and then the NAP commission too, right? They made reference. So all that was before.
It was either before or going on at the time. And the NAP commission, the NYPD had a lot of police corruption and it went up. And they had hearings. And it was like the first of its kind. And there was a lot of crazy stuff going on because you got to remember when I got hired, there was some old timers left over from NAP, a lot of Vietnam guys.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, guys would work into their 60s until the mandatory retirement in 62. And I heard crazy stories like cops that were taking money, you know, for protection or something. When they heard of NAP, they started coming into work with self-addressed stamped envelopes. So any money they collected, they'd put in a self-addressed stamped envelope and throw it in the mailbox. So in case they got searched, you know, all sorts of crazy. And the funny thing about NAP was it bled into my time period because every year around the holidays, and they still do it to this day, it's called the Holiday Integrity Program. So right around Thanksgiving, I mean, internal affairs will wait at the station house. And when you come in at the end of your shift or to use the bathroom, or they'll pull you over in a police car and make you pop the trunk to see if you're shopping on duty. They don't want you.
Oh
yeah. I mean, you know,
that's some dirty dogs.
Yeah. So a lot of things from NAP has bled into what's still going on, or at least during my time.
But during that time period, New York was going through all kinds of BS because they were almost bankrupt, or they were bankrupt. You know, the city was in disrepair. You know, it looks like a scene out of Mad Max or something like that back in that time. You know, there's garbage all over the place, rats running around all over the place. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vic, you know, police weren't being paid very well back then.
No, and that was one of the things that came out of the NAP commission, although, you know, they didn't green light stealing, but they said one of the reasons cops were stealing or taking money was a result of low pay and low benefits.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah. There's another scene coming up I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if we have it. It's when they 1430. It's detectives. No. It's the one where they tell everybody, okay, you've been sworn in. You have your guns and shields. Technically, you are police officers until you graduate. Don't look for trouble. I guess we're going to play that now. You'll see. And I want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one. Okay. So Greenberg asked a question. Let's see if the question comes up that he asked him. But yeah, I know the Greenberg, he keeps interrupting and driving this lieutenant nuts. I joined up to be a detective. How long do I got to wait? Right. Here's why here's what I thought interesting about this. And they changed it with the LA Sheriff's Department. You guys can address it too. So what happens when we got sworn in, just like these guys, and this is LA Sheriff, I got sworn in 83. And so when I got sworn in, they actually gave us our guns and our badges. And we hadn't even gone into the academy yet. And it was just like this, where they said, hey, you know, technically you guys are deputy sheriffs, but, you know, you put that away until you've, you know, graduated from the academy and you've passed. And so later on, people became, I don't know what they called them. Instead of, they were different than cadets, but they were like, basically, you didn't get your gun and your official badge until you were pretty much graduating. But when we came on, you got your stuff and you were telling, just put your gun in your top drawer and this kind of thing. And Vic, how was that for you?
Oh, it's so different. So you're in the police academy early, right? And one morning you come into a classroom and there's 3 guys from the range and they've got on a table 3 guns. I think it was a Smith & Wesson, a Ruger, and I think a Colt, but I'm not sure. And they gave you about 15 seconds to decide which gun was going to protect you for the rest of your life. Okay. And it was like, and that was it. And you walked away from it. You didn't take it home. you went to the range. When you go to the range, your gun was there waiting for you. You qualify, you target practice, and it stayed there. You got your gun and shield the day. It's called Gun and Shield Day. It's this little informal thing in the police academy. The day before you graduate, the range comes. They give you your shield in a little manila. It looked like a thing you buy a nickel bag of weed in the 70s. The shield came in that, and you got your gun, you loaded it, you put it in your holster, and they told you, don't touch that goddamn thing until you graduate and you're someone else's problem. Like, they waited to the last possible second to give you your gun and shield. It was the day before I graduated the academy after 6 months.
Yeah. So, but I imagine that was kind of real probably right before that, right? Maybe because I know we did that. So maybe that's probably realistic.
I can't see the NYPD trusting anybody with anything. And they don't want you getting involved in anything off duty from the academy until the day you retire. I mean, you could witness the most horrific thing. They want you to go to a payphone, or nowadays a cell phone, and call 911, tell them who you are, and observe. They don't want you getting involved off duty making arrests.
We had a guy in the academy. His name is Leverance. I wish I should have brought up the news article. He's in our academy class. He's in church, and a guy starts walking through the back of the church, and he becomes an active shooter and just starts popping people. And Leverance stood up, and he took him down and killed the guy. And here he was in the academy. He's getting this award and everything. Right? Hadn't even graduated yet, but he had his gun on him.
For us, it was very similar, where your first day you're sworn in, and they said, you are now police officers. Do not go out and do anything until you get done with 6 months of this academy. You did not get a badge, and you did not get a gun on the first day. That's a recipe for disaster. And because you're not trained up, it's a gun, for God's sakes. Some people never even touched a gun until they got on the
that's
job.
Right. Oh man. Yeah.
And after we get sworn in, you're cops. Then the president of the union came in, and he says, if I ever hear of any of you doing anything off duty, he says, I'm going to slap you so hard. He's like, no, do not do it. He said, if you got 20 years on, don't do anything off duty. Unless grandma is getting killed on the street corner, do not do anything. It always turns back to the cop, and it always hurts you. He's like, never do it. So for us, after we were in the academy for like maybe 2 weeks or something like that, the range master comes in with this cart full of Glocks, and they're all in Tupperware. And he puts them on your table, and he says, don't touch them. So everyone's staring at their Tupperware, and it's like, okay, we're going to do this by the letters. Open the lid. Everybody opens the lid at the same time. Okay, there's a serial number on the side. Write that down in your memo book. Now,
I remember that.
That is your gun now forever. He says, memorize the serial number. You're going to want that. Blah, blah. This is the Glock, 40 caliber. It was model 22. And he went over the whole thing. And what I liked about this guy, he was an old SWAT guy. It was the tac squad in Milwaukee. He's like this super, super sharp shooter. He was a very, very good shot. And he was great at testifying in court. He looked like somebody's grandpa. And, he was great with juries. And, he would be like an officer involved shooting, testifying as an expert. And he's like, okay, now, when you think I'm going to shoot you, when do you think you should shoot me? He says, use your fingers. Your fingers are now your guns, and shoot me when you think your life is in danger. And, he's pulling out a comb. He's pulling out a phone. All these jurors are just blowing him away. And he says, well, all I want to do is comb my hair, and you just killed me. And this is a well-lit, controlled area. This isn't 2:00 in the morning running down some alley with light. So he said, maybe we could see, what's coming. But I always remembered him. He says, yeah, we got these fancy new Glocks because they're transitioning from the Ruger 6-shooters, the 357s. And he says, I don't care what you have on your hip. He said, it all depends on what kind of shot you are. He says, you know what? 6-shooter's fine. There's nothing wrong with a 6-shooter. There's nothing wrong with my Ruger. He says, yeah, the Glock, you got more bullets. Yeah, you could probably shoot a little quicker, whatever. You could reload quicker, but it's all training and mindset. He said, get it out of your head that if you have a Glock, now you're like super shooter guy. He's like, no, it's not going to happen. So we put the covers back on the Tupperware. He collects all the guns, and they were stored in the basement where the shooting range was. And the only time we could access it was when we were training. And every time you took your gun out, you checked the serial number, make sure it was yours. And the day of graduation, you were able to get your pistol and your badge. That was a huge, huge deal.
Wow. And it looked like these guys, your first gun was the Glock?
Yep, Glock Model 22, the 40 cal.
Yeah. And you started what year?
1995. They're just transitioning over from the Ruger 357, the wheel gun.
And when I started, it looked like we were using what these guys were using. We did the Smith & Wesson Model 15 wheel guns. We called them wheel guns. And Vic, was that the same? Do you think they were using the Model 15s, or what was the handgun that NYPD had originally?
There were a couple with the NYPD.
You didn't have to have just one. You could have a choice, or
yeah, there was one or two. And when I got hired, my class was the first one. We went to a stainless steel hammerless
I like
38.
that. Yeah.
And the reason they went to that is, and the incident happened in my neighborhood. There was a guy in my neighborhood that he was on a train platform and he was throwing light bulbs off the top, onto the street, and someone called shots fired. The transit cop rolled up and put him and his buddy against the wall, and he cocked his gun. The guy moved and he blew his head off. So the NYPD said, okay, that's it. Everybody from this day forward shall have hammerless stainless steel guns. So, and they used to call us the silver gun rookies, because we had, so like, no matter what your uniform looked like, if you rubbed up your leather or try to look like an old time hairbags, all someone had to do was look at your holster and see the silver gun. Even the perps knew, like, this guy is new because he's got a stainless steel gun in his holster. So like Patrick said, about in 1994, 1995, we started going over to the Glocks, and then everybody was the same.
Gotcha. Yeah, we went to the Beretta 92F, I think 90, around the same time, I think. Yeah. But initially, everybody, it was the sheriff's, philosophy that we all had to have the same gun in case, we had to throw each other ammunition or whatever, and he didn't want to have a different. And eventually, they went to everybody having different. But initially, when I came on, everybody has to have the same gun, the same ammo, and
same thing with us. We had to have the same gun. Everything was uniform. Like Chicago PD, they buy their own guns.
Yeah.
So, but it has to be on a list of, approved guns.
Weapons.
And you have to qualify with it. But that old trope of, give me your badge and give me your gun, they can't do that in Chicago. Because, hey, I own this thing. You're stealing my gun.
Well, with us, we have to pay for it. We have to pay for everything up front. I remember within a week, I had to write a check for $1,000. I had to borrow money off my mother.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
Wow.
In 1987, it was like $1,200.
That's huge. That
included your gun, all your uniforms. You pay for everything. But if you get suspended, modified, or fired, they take your gun. I don't know if they reimburse you for it, but they're taking it. Like, especially in New York, where they don't want anybody to own a gun.
See, like the only time they would take your gun, like say in Chicago or a situation like that, is if it was used in a shooting. Now it's evidence. So that's a foregone conclusion. Same thing with us. If an officer uses his gun in whatever situation, the gun is now evidence, and then they get a different one.
When did they take it? No, after the shooting, when did they take it?
What happens is you never take it on the street unless it's like totally egregious, because what does that look like to the public and 100 different news cameras that are there? It looks like you're guilty as sin. Look, they're taking his gun. He must have done something wrong. And it's like, no, a sergeant is assigned to that person. I've been in 7 officer involved shootings where I was one of the bosses or the incident commander.
Yeah.
Where a cop had shot and killed somebody. And what happens is you assign a sergeant to them, and they're more or less your pal until you go downtown, and that's where they're going to take photos of you in the clothes that you're wearing. Either you're like an undercover or a uniform or a detective or whatever. And the investigators, like I said, they'll take pictures. They'll take your pistol. Then you're like in a conference room, and they'll download the weapon and see how many bullets you fired.
Correct. Yeah, we did the same thing.
Right. Yeah. And then from there, then you're going to be, times have changed a lot for the better. Before, you would have to do 3 interviews with 3 different entities. You had the department, you had the investigators, you had the DA's office, you had internal affairs. And it's human nature. Okay, it could be 4 o'clock in the morning and you were on 4 hours of overtime. You already worked, 4 to midnight. you're just dead tired. And you might remember something a little differently when you talk to somebody different, like an
Correct.
hour
Yeah.
later or 2 hours later. Now they give them like 3 days to decompress.
Yes, they do.
And-
We did the same thing, but and initially psychologically we stopped taking the guns. Everybody kept their gun, and like you said, someone was assigned to them, and then once they got back to the station, they took the gun and they gave you a replacement.
Correct.
So they weren't disarming you.
Yeah,
per se.
unless you were arresting the officer, like I said, it was some
Right.
egregious, weird, like off duty. It's like, okay, this
Yeah,
is
something's
bad.
not
This is not what we like. Then the gun is evidence, and then they're going to jail.
Correct. Yeah. How about Vic and NYPD? Same kind of thing.
Yeah, they
did
give
have,
you
like,
the guys. Yeah, whoever pulls the trigger gets 3 days. But if you're a witness to a shooting, you're not going anywhere for a while.
No,
And
yeah.
the interviews are nonstop. It's going to be the sergeant that shows up. It's going to be the lieutenant, your commanding officer. The borough captain's going to come by. Somebody from the borough, another person's going to come from the borough. And just when you think like you're getting up off the canvas, here comes a DA with a stenographer that wants to pull you into a room for a friendly chat.
Yeah.
It's just like the fucking hits just keep on coming. I mean, and like Patrick said, you could be on 7-8 hours overtime. You're not going anywhere.
No.
And you're there. You could be there for 48 hours, and they don't care. I mean, you're in the time capsule.
And the law changed to whereas when I first started, we investigated our own shootings like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a law changed in Wisconsin, and that's pretty much across the board in the country, that the entity, the department that's involved will not investigate their own. You have an outside entity coming in. So there's shoot teams that are on call, and it's usually suburbs.
We had basically like a review board too. It would come out. There was like a separate entity by the board of supervisors who picked these people. Yeah.
Yeah. This is detectives and bosses that come from different suburbs, and they're all on call, and they know they're on call.
Yeah.
So, just in case something happens. But what I didn't like about it was you have these guys from the suburbs investigating this shooting, and they might have 1 or 2 homicides a year, sometimes not even that, and
they
not
don't have
investigating a police shooting.
Yeah.
It's like everything else. The more reps you get, hopefully the better you get at whatever you're doing. And it's the same thing with investigations.
Yeah.
You had detectives and bosses or whoever that have done this. We had it down to a science.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was, and what you're talking about, Vic, it's like, pitch the tents. The circus is coming. Everybody wants.
We had the same thing. First, it's internal affairs. Then it's the and then it's the shooting team, the DA shooting team. Then that's outside review board. Yeah, you get tired.
And you watch people run out of the station house because at first everybody wants to know what's going on,
right?
And then everybody realizes the impact and what's coming. The station house becomes Little House on the Prairie because an NYPD precinct is big. I mean, the smaller precincts got 100 cops. The larger ones, like in Manhattan, can have 300-400 people.
Yeah,
and they know the shit just hit the fan, and no one wants to be around when the shoe flies start buzzing around.
Well, it's funny because there's certain people that have to be there, and as a sergeant, you were the incident commander usually. You have the clipboard. I'd have somebody next to me. I'd pick a cop that had the best handwriting. And it's like, okay, you're writing everything down right now. You had the command post, blah, blah, blah. So all this brass starts showing up, and they would start, hurling around, orders or whatever to look important. Then there was some that were honestly just great bosses, that weren't assholes about it. And then there were some that wanted to look important at a police shooting so they could get promoted or look good to the chief or whatever. And I'd look at them and I'd be like, oh, okay, you're the incident commander now. Here's my clipboard.
Right. Here you go. Yeah.
Here's Officer Jones. They've got really good handwriting. This is your baby now. No. I didn't mean that, Sarge. And I'm like, oh no,
really? They back away real quick.
Yeah.
Those are the guys too that you always see them at a press conference. They're like a wooden Indian in a cigar store. They had nothing to do with anything, and you see them up there. We did a case one time. I hate to go off point. We did a case one time where we covered like 30 stolen cars in a case, and we did the press conference at our pound. And the commanding officer of the pound shows up 10 seconds before the press conference and is pissed that no one called him. And I'm like, you're in charge of a parking lot. Like, and he was like, his uniform, and he's standing there and he was pissed. We thought it had nothing to do with the case, but he's a parking attendant and he was bent.
It's funny how these our agencies have all. It's so similar, man. It's just human nature,
Yep.
I guess. And we're gonna look at the next scene. I got some questions for both you guys on this one. This is where these guys make the arrest off duty, or they make an arrest, right? And they're going to the arraignment. Basically, the detectives are accusing these guys of a shakedown, right? Because
Yeah,
they're
called flaking.
yeah. And then the bailiff, is he's telling them, hey, you could cut down your wait time for a few bucks. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I think this is the. Oh yeah. Here they're accusing these guys. Yeah, you're looking to make extra cash because they made this arrest. Yeah.
Yeah, those were already detectives, and they were kind of stepping on their toes. These
And
two
were you
young
guys to
rookies.
even they kind of make it hard for you to make an arrest, off duty because you really don't know where you would book these guys or what you would do. But these guys just went ahead, and then I think they're going to go to the court, right? So then they go to the arraignment where these guys are waiting for
Yes.
hours, and I was going to ask you, Vic. So, and you, Pat. So, when I was a cop in upstate New York, I get maybe it's just that way in the state of New York, right? So every time we made an arrest, we had to arraign them right away. In upstate, we went to a justice or whatever. And so these guys in NYPD, right? You make it a collar, as you guys would say. You had to arraign them. Now in California, there was a bail schedule. So if I arrested a guy for a burglary and I booked him at the station jail, the bail was already set. I didn't even arraign him. I just looked down. Oh, burglary first degree, $5,000. Boom, boom, he's in. So, Vic, explain that arraignment process and your experience with it.
When you make an arrest in the NYPD, right? The first thing you
Yeah.
do is you bring them to the station house, wherever. Even if you're in a citywide unit, you bring them to the precinct where you made the arrest.
Yeah,
All right, so
same with
that's what
us.
these guys are doing here. I got you. Okay.
You bring them to the
Flake.
desk.
I got it.
Like in the movies, got a lot of things wrong. So you go to the desk officer hands you a piece of paper. You fill out all the pedigree information. You take all the prisoner's property out in front of the desk. He counts it. He asks the perp if he's okay. Is he sick? Is he injured? Then you put him in a holding cell. Takes like 2-3 hours at least to do all the paperwork with the NYPD. From there, you transport the prisoner to the borough central booking. So if you're in the Bronx central booking, and you can be there. I mean, you are married to this perp. If you go to Bronx central booking after 6-7 hours and the guy is going through withdrawal, they go, get him out of here, bring him to the hospital. No one's coming to relieve you.
Wow.
Then after you're done lodging him at central booking, then you go to pre-arraignment, you hand in your paperwork. Now, in the old days, arraignment went 24 hours. So you would hand in your paperwork and you would sit, like in the Bronx, you would sit in this tremendous conference room with cops from every precinct in the Bronx, and there'd be district attorneys in another room, and they'd pick up your folder and they'd say, Ferrari, you'd come in, you'd sit down with the DA, she'd write it up. She'd hand you back your folder. You'd hand it to a typist. So what they're showing is true. You would wait for the arraignment.
Yeah. Wow.
And in the old days, that was true, where cops would pay the guy doing pre-arraignment money. We just used to shuffle the photo folders, or if you knew a secretary, or if you were making a lot of arrests, you knew the people there. They'd say, hey, how's it going? I got to get out of here. Like, all right, well, I'll move you to the top of the pile, or I want to make overtime. So no, you can. I mean, I made 15-20 hours sometimes with a simple arrest.
Yeah, so we had people who would do that, right? So they made a lot of at the time they were toss arrests when the cocaine wars were going on for crack. They would throw their dope, and so there was so many toss arrests, and so you'd be in Compton Court, which was the Siberia of the judicial system, right? And so these guys, I mean, like you said, Vic, some of these guys were like, they were in no hurry, and so they were like, yeah, I hope it goes like 7 hours before they put on my I forgot what they called it, but it wasn't an arraignment. They had already been arraigned, but preliminary hearing, right? They're prelims.
Yeah,
they were prelims. And so these guys were like, I remember asking a guy, hey, how you doing? Oh, making lieutenant's pay, because they make these dope arrests, right? And they would just love it that Compton Court would take 7 hours before they would call their case. And they wanted that, right? So
I learned so much. I learned so much as a rookie cop. My first 4 or 5 years, learned so much.
Yeah.
Sitting in those rooms with cops from different, and the way cops are, everyone's got their specialty.
Yeah.
There were cops there that always had his car arrest. I'd pick their brain. There were gun guys. I would pick their brains. And then what they did with the NYPD typical fashion, they started doing it where video booking, which was like Max Headroom, and it never worked. Then they went to just phone conference. And unless you had a really heavy duty arrest and and it got approved, then you could go down there and meet face to face.
Yeah.
And when I was a detective, you could pretty much do that on your own. But a precinct cop, they wanted you to do it from the station house where you would call up. But I learned so much being in that room with veteran cops that from different precincts all over the Bronx. You know, it was like going to college.
See, Milwaukee, we did things a little differently. In the 70s, when you arrested somebody for no matter what it was, you had to take them downtown. You wouldn't take them to the district station. And you would have to go before the lieutenant or captain of the detective bureau. And you would literally take this guy, kicking and screaming in front of him, and you'd plead your case. Okay, I saw him doing X, Y, and Z. You know, he beat up his wife. He did this. He did that. And the lieutenant or captain would be like, okay. And there was a police report called a show up, because you're literally showing up at a desk in front of a boss. And, you know, as we were arresting a lot more people, that just got silly. So just like you, Vic, if you arrested somebody in District 5, you're going to that district station. And the booker would do the same thing. Yeah, take your belt off, your shoelaces, your drawstrings. You know, do you feel like killing yourself? You know, yada, yada, yada. And they'd fill out some paperwork. And when I first started, that was it. Then you put them in a holding cell. It's temporary holding cells. And the police officer would do their report. But first, you'd have to go to the lieutenant and tell him what you have. It's like, okay, this guy did X, Y, and Z. All right. Okay. And this is before there were cameras in the booking room. The lieutenant or the acting lieutenant would have to physically come out and look at the prisoner to make sure he wasn't all scuffed up. It's like, okay. And if he was, you had to explain. It's like, okay, what's that huge gouju over his head? You know, it's like, how did that happen? You know, that kind of thing. So, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. And then from there, you write all your reports, and depending on what it is, okay, 2-3 hours. Some people were fast, some people weren't. And we would just leave. And then on to the next hitch. And then
in the LA Sheriff's Department, so you would make your arrest this way. You'd make your arrest, and then you have to go to the watch sergeant and say, hey, I carried a concealed weapon. I turned around this corner, and he reached in his jacket and he threw the gun down. I got the gun, and we got the guy. Okay, take it to the watch commander. If it's a felony, it has to go to the watch commander, the lieutenant. We run the arrest by, and then he has an arrest review. He signs, and then he signs off on it. Then you go right to the booking. You throw them and you book them in, and then you can go right back on a patrol. So you can make 3 to 4 felony arrests in one day. And when you were on training, that's what they would do. They would boom, boom. You would start packing them in. And at the end of your shift, you'd say, start writing your reports, and he would go home, the TO maybe. You might be there till 7 a.m. the next morning writing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Then what would happen with us is, you write your reports and the boss would sign them, hopefully. And there was, I think in this movie, would he rip up the report or what was that? I think it was somewhere in this movie where, they were done with like some kind of police report, and the boss just like ripped it up in front of them.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember the scene.
Oh, Shaughnessy, the desk officer, because they got punished and they were doing reports.
Yes.
No, you did it wrong, and he tore them up.
Yeah, this is before computers. And when I first started, we hand wrote all of our reports.
So did we,
with carbon paper.
Yeah.
And there was a desk sergeant. There was a sergeant that was acting lieutenant quite a bit on day shift, and I worked late shift. So if you're on field training, you could expect to work till at least noon every day. Yeah. So you're bleeding into day shift, and we always arrested a lot of people. And I remember the first time I walk in there, the sergeant's he was this really funny guy, and my FTO's looking at me and he's looking at the sergeant. And I'm like, what's going on? There's like some inside joke. So he's like, yeah, I don't know about this report, O'Donnell. He'd pull out his lighter. We call him Sergeant Cigar because he was always smoking a cigar. And he would set my report on fire in front of me.
Yeah, we had people do that. Yeah, they would redline it and throw it back at you. Like, what?
No, he would literally set it on fire.
No, yeah, I know. I've heard people doing that too. Yeah.
In narcotics, we had these long forms, these 5s. And sometimes you'd see a guy banging on his IBM, typing, and another detective would go by and hit the back of the report with a lighter, and the guy looked like Jerry Lee Lewis playing the piano. What the fuck? Yeah, the report would go up in the typewriter.
Oh my God, it's funny. Hey, so Vic, how would it work on training if you're NYPD? So that you make that one arrest, that's it for the day, right? I mean,
sometimes you could double if you had it. Like when I was in the DUI unit, my partner and I had it to a science where sometimes we could squeeze 2 in the same shift.
yeah.
Because if arraignment was closed, you just lodged the prisoner, meaning you had to go back the following morning to write up the arrest. So if we could get the body in to central booking and get all the paperwork done, we could go out and make another arrest. And then my partner and I would do what's called a tour change. So instead of doing a 6 at night till 2 in the morning the following day, we'd come in at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's another thing. There was no advantages to making an arrest on the 4 to 12 shift, because if they closed arraignment, guess what? It's not overtime at that point. It's a tour change. So if you're a 4 to 12 guy and you don't get done till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning processing the arrest, it's just a simple tour change, and you do a 7 to 3. And guys would burn their time that way because you're exhausted. You've been up 16, 17 hours. So what do? You get done at noon, right? And you take 3 hours lost time because it's like, food doesn't taste right. You have no sleep. You guys know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny because in the 70s and 80s, you showed your prisoner to the boss down at the detective bureau, and you had to go see the DA no matter what the charge was that morning.
Wow.
You would physically have to present your case to the district attorney, and you would explain to them, X, Y, and Z. Now, it just got way too busy for that to happen. It wasn't efficient. So we had liaisons that their full-time job was just presenting cases to the DA. And it was just a big old bullpen. And there were certain cases that it was they call it officer to court. The officer had to take it to the DA. And when you were on training, your FTO made sure every arrest was officer to court. You were in the DA's office every day. That didn't happen once you were off field training. But, I remember one of my FTOs, his wife was off in the summer and he needed money. So, and he knew all the girls that were the clerks, and we'd get there about 9 o'clock in the morning after working midnight to 8. Hey, we got this case. And she'd wink and was like, you want to be at the back, don't you? And he says, hell yeah. So we'd be there till like 2 p.m. before a DA would even look at it. Oh my
God.
Just sitting there reading a newspaper. There was no internet. And I'm just trying to keep my eyeballs open, man. It was horrible. Then you go to a DA that's overworked. There's literally a pile of files like taller than them on their desk. What do you got? Some of them wouldn't even look at you. And it's like, then they just transcribe it on their transcribe machine. The secretary somewhere would type it up for them. Then you'd have to swear to it after that.
Yeah.
And then your day was done. Then rinse, repeat, do it all over again the next day.
Hey, was that accurate, Vic? These guys, their first assignment was traffic. The 21 is that an actual station, Stuyvesant? Or no, that was made up. Okay,
that was all made up. And the way it works, in their time, and then in my time, you would go to the police academy, and after the police academy, you would go to a borough. And the NYPD New York City has 5 boroughs, but the larger boroughs like Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan are broken in 2. So you have Queens North, Queens South, Manhattan North, Manhattan South. The NYPD is run like a McDonald's franchise.
Yeah.
Think of one police plaza is McDonald's University, right? Each borough has a borough office in it with a chief that sets policy in said borough. And then you have the precincts, and there's 77 precincts, police stations sprinkled throughout New York City's 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
So back then, and in my time, when you got out of the police academy, you went to a borough, and every borough had zones, and every zone had a field training unit. So I went to zone 7. I was in the South Bronx, and my zone covered 3 NYPD precincts. So I had several training sergeants. There was 30 of us assigned to zone 7, FTU 7. And then they would sprinkle us out on foot posts in the South Bronx.
Wow.
Baptism by fire. This is in the middle of the crack epidemic. There's junkies walking by me looking to sell. I mean, I grew up in the Bronx, but like not this part of the Bronx. Like people are talking to me in Spanish. It was crazy. And then a couple of times a month, you would ride with the training sergeant, And like Patrick said, they'd burn you out. You'd go to every DOA
Yes.
call. You'd go to
yeah.
every shitty call because they wanted you to learn, because they knew you were going to avoid the heavy stuff. You were going to avoid the not so pleasant stuff. They wanted you to get your reps in. You're making these bullshit collars because they want you to know the system. They want you to know the process.
That's right.
Then after your 6 months in field training, you go to a precinct. And that's where the politicking begins. My dad was a butcher. I wound up in the South Bronx. I didn't know anybody. I wound up in a shithole precinct. If your father or your uncle is somebody, you go into Midtown North and you're helping Japanese tourists take photos of the Empire State Building. So it just depends. Like, and they wouldn't have gone to a traffic unit right out of the academy. They would have went to a precinct. And you're not running around making arrests as rookie cops, because they would cool your heels.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
like they'd rein you in like you wouldn't believe.
So Vic, when I go to Manhattan during Christmas, and now these guys are out there, it says traffic on their little, what part of the process are they in? They're directing traffic on the street corner, and it says traffic division or whatever.
There's summons cops. I mean, basically what they do is they go around New York City, the Manhattan area, and they write parking tickets, gridlock tickets. I mean, those guys are revenue. That's their job, giving out parking tickets and moving violations, and then they use them during rush hour in the morning and on the 4 or 5 o'clock to direct traffic.
Are they there by choice, or is that what they want to do, or
So the NYPD works like this. Every precinct's got a couple of guys or girls that are the summons cops, right?
Yeah.
And they're strange ducks. I don't know how it is with you, Patrick or Cliff, but the summons guys were not really, they were kind of pariahs in the station house, because they were summons, must give summons. They're not making arrests. They're not backing you up. It's like they had their own gig. And, you'd always get phone calls like, this guy just banged my brother-in-law. What's his story? You're like, there's no talking to this guy.
Exactly. Forget it. Yeah.
So a traffic unit is like a boiled reduction of those people.
Interesting.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not really held in my opinion,
high esteem.
But if you get jammed up too, they'll send you there. You could be.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. They can screw you and send you there because they know that's not your mindset. And the NYPD, it's called highway therapy. New York City is so large, right?
Yes.
If you work in the Bronx and you screw up, they're going to send you to Brooklyn. If you live in Brooklyn, they're going to send you to the Bronx. So they'll move you around the chessboard to really make your commute a living hell.
So we had freeway therapy. And so the same thing, because they could send you could be driving 3 hours to work, man. And, it's for the good of the department. And then, if you try to fight that, right, it's like, well, this is not punishment. Sometimes they would give you even a better job. Like, well, this is like, people have been trying to go here. They moved me and a bunch of people out of a South Central station, and we tried to sue over the transfers. We were on the front page. We sued over these transfers, and we tried to get an injunction from a judge, and he wouldn't give it. And we were going to a choice station, but we didn't want to leave this high crime station, right? And so, the department's view was, hey, these guys are going to a matter of fact, I had a guy in the station where he goes, I've been trying to get to Walnut Station for 2 years. You're going after what? And so, so you couldn't fight it, right? And so that was what they did, but they were really, getting you. Yeah.
See, going back to the traffic thing, Vic, I'm interested in that because our traffic guys are our motorcycle cops.
Yeah.
Their job is to write tickets and traffic enforcement and investigate accidents. So everybody loved the motorcycle guys because here you have like 3 cars twisted up and, you're sweeping up somebody's liver, and the bike guys were all excited about it. You hear them, it was like 800, 812, 813. We're all responding. It's like, good. You can have this mess.
Well, it's different with us because you're talking about the traffic guys. We had highway units. So every borough had a highway unit. In the Bronx, you had Highway 1. That's totally different than traffic. And their job was they were almost like the state police for the NYPD. Those guys sat on the side of the road and they gave out speeding tickets, DUIs, like you said, traffic investigations.
Yeah.
They had a heavy truck unit that would sit at the,
same with us.
bridge and weigh trucks and tires. Those guys were liked because, like you said,
Oh, yeah, I loved them.
they gave out speeding tickets, but there was discretion with them.
Right.
And on top of that, they did like all the motorcades when the
Yep.
president comes into town, or
Absolutely.
dignitaries, or we have Fleet Week. I mean, they're different. I mean, yes, they write speeding tickets, but they're not held in the same thing as the summons guys.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the sheriff, LA sheriff, I mean, they are in the contracting business. So they have like 60 contract cities that instead of having their own police department, they contract with us. So like City of West Hollywood is a $10 million contract. They could have their own, it's a 2 square mile city, but it has the Sunset Strip. So it has all the clubs, and it has the Roxy, and it has the Whiskey A Go Go, and it has
Sure.
the Viper Room and all these things. So that's all, and that's not LAPD. That's our contract that we've always had, $10 million. So now it's like a menu, right? Well, we want like 5 crime cars, and how about a couple of traffic? Because traffic cars are cheaper. Well, you can have 3 of those with this. And so we would have traffic cars, and then we would have also, and we want 2 motor units too. You can have 2 motors. How about maybe we can have some bike units? Yeah, you can have a bike unit. And so then they would pay, and their contract includes all this stuff. So the department was making so much money with contracts, man. It's just, they were like, hey, do you want to lose your job? I mean, if you screw up this contract, so you'd have all these power plays with the mayors and the captains of the stations. And so, captains could be booted out because the city wasn't happy. And oh man, that captain's gone tomorrow, right? Crazy politics. I don't know if you had any of that maybe with your bureaus, Vic. Could somebody get bounced out of a bureau because they were making the people happy in that area? Or
not so much contracts, but I mean, different organizations and different things pull different amounts of weight, or we call it juice in the NYPD. So it just depends. But I mean, like, so in the Bronx, you had Yankee Stadium, and right. Yankee Stadium has the Yankee Stadium detail. So from baseball season to the end of baseball season, there's 20 or 30 cops assigned to Yankee Stadium detail, right? And the close, and they have the choice spots.
Oh yeah.
And like when the Red Sox come into town or playoffs, then they start flying in cops from different units to supplement. And then probably around 2000, they came up with this thing called the Yankee Stadium detail, where there was a liaison that would hire off-duty NYPD cops in uniform.
Yep.
To be in the stadium, around the stadium. And
yeah,
if you screwed that up, because the Yankees pull a lot of weight. I mean, and they do have a really good working relationship with the city and the NYPD. I really can't say a bad word about the Yankees. And I'm sure the Mets have this, but I'm not a Queens guy, but I'm sure the Mets have the same deal with the NYPD.
How about you, Patrick? What do you have any major the
Milwaukee Brewers.
I was going to say, okay, yeah. You have a special unit that worked those, or just overtime?
No, it's all overtime. It's all overtime, and the Milwaukee Brewers pay for that overtime. Same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
The basketball team, they pay the overtime for the officers to be there. And now Major League Baseball also has like their own security SOP.
Right.
And
yeah.
Part of that SOP is, you have to have bomb sniffing dogs come in, in different intervals. You have to have officers that are rifle trained.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have to be like out in front, and people get really put back by that. You have a cop with an M4 slung, and they're like, oh, that's overkill. And it's like, why are you doing that? It's like, that's Major League Baseball. That's not us. They're saying that's a part of the contract. We have to do this.
Yeah.
And you won't be crying if there's an active shooter and, I take them out with this, but that's another, that could be another show. But it's all voluntary, and it's all overtime. And some guys, they're big baseball people, and they absolutely love it. They want the money. For me, I had enough overtime where just doing the job, I didn't want to do my job on my days off. That was like, okay, I got 2 days off. That's sacred to me. If I can avoid it, I don't want to be at work.
I was the same way. Hey, Vic, what about like special events like at the Garden and stuff? Would they have just overtime or special units, or?
It just depends on what was going on. If it's something big. So I worked in auto crime, right? But I was under the umbrella of what's called OCCB, Organized Crime Control Bureau. But we used to call it Other Commands Can Borrow. So, if Billy Joel's playing at the Garden.
Awesome.
You come
Yeah.
in, you know, Billy Joel's playing on Friday. You'd come into work Thursday and there'd be a detail roster with 10 detectives. And it's like, you're going to the Billy Joel concert. And I'm not hearing the Piano Man, but I'm standing in front of I'm standing in front of Penn Station. And they would do that with everything. I mean, I've worked 17 out of 20 of my years at Times Square during New Year's Eve.
Oh.
I've worked the Macy's Day Parade, the St. Patrick's Day Parade countless times. I mean, they just throw you in uniform. The NYPD has between 30 and 40,000 members. So they just throw bodies.
Sure.
Yeah. Awesome. This is like 10 years ago. My wife, it was her bucket list to be, you know, Times Square to see the ball drop and everything, right? So you got to go in the corrals, you know.
Yes.
And, you know, once you're in these corrals, you can't move.
You can't move. And what people don't realize is you can't go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
none of the
was-
restaurants are going to let you in.
That's a hard no.
So I said, I can't do that. But so I put this thing with a bag on it and all this other thing, right? So then we met these two detectives that were in charge of our corral, right? So I was asking him, I go, hey, none of these people, you can't leave this corral and go to the bathroom or do anything. And he goes, no, they can't, but you can leave anytime you want to, and I'll let you back. I mean, they treated us like kings and queens.
What year did you go? Do you know what year?
It was like 5-6 years ago.
All right, I was already retired. Yeah. I mean, cops take care of other cops, obviously, but yeah, for the most part, they're pissing and shitting in the crowd.
Yeah. I saw it. Yeah, but man, I was like 12 hours. We went at 3 p.m. That's when we had to get in the corral.
Yes. Holy cow, 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a badge guy. I don't badge people. You know what I mean? It's like 3 years later, my stepson, my son, he's on the department. I don't know. He went somewhere down right down to Times Square and badged somebody. They brought him up on top of some building. And he had a beautiful view of the freaking ball drop. I mean, you know, my wife goes, "Why don't you badge people?" And I don't like doing that. You know
how it is too, right? I mean, most of the time, cops are friendly with other cops, but you can come across a guy that doesn't care.
Yep.
You run into the one guy that's going to leave a bad taste, and that's why you're kind of hesitant because you know what I mean? And then you kind of feel like a schmuck.
No, we did that. As a matter of fact, my friends go, "Yeah, we want to go to the Empire State Building." He goes, "My wife goes, just badge the guy down there and ask him how we would do that." I think because you just tell him, and then basically, hey, LA Sheriff's, Sergeant, yeah. So, how would we get maybe in the line there? And he goes, I have no idea. Okay, thanks. It was like, oh man, the one time I do that.
Yeah, it takes all kinds because some cop is like gonna be Junior Serpico and think that oh my god, this is so wrong and so whatever, and it's like you need to
yes, the sheriff in LA, these guys really don't know how it works. So we had the Major Cities Chief Conference in LA. I don't know, this might have been 92 or 3 or something, right? Do you remember the guy who was commissioner? Was it Seraphin? Vic?
Safer.
I'm sorry, Safer. Yeah.
I would Safer. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was Safer's time. So he had a group with him, like 2 sergeants, like 5 officers, right? They were part of Safer's group, man. And so I was assigned to the City Walk at Universal City. We had a substation up there because it was in county area, most of it. So these guys were coming up, man. And my lieutenant says, hey, you better take care of these guys, And I go, I know, you know how it works in New York. I know. So, man, I went to this club they were going in, man. I gave them my credit card personally. I go, hey, you put everything on this credit card, man. Nice. And those guys drank for free on me because that's the way it is, man. And so for about 5 or 6 years, I never took up. They were always like, when you come to New York, let me know. We're going to take care of you, So those are different days, though, Oh,
yeah.
But New York guys were great. And Seraphin, man, they sent me like, a commemorative, like, bronze shield in a case. It says,
oh, cool.
Yeah, man. NYPD.
Nice.
And yeah, that was awesome, man. But anyways, hey, before we go to the next clip, I want to say the chief who's on special assignment, he chimed in and said that we were doing a great job and he thanked us for our service on the show. So I want to let you guys know. Thanks, you, Chief Pat Jordan, who I worked for when he was a lieutenant, who went on to become a chief. But so this next one is it's 2240. Is a captain office. They request assignment together. I think the next one we're going to see these guys walk into that captain's office in the supposed 21st precinct, right? And, yeah, we want to be assigned together. And he's like, "What? Who are you guys?" There he is. There's those 2 guys. They're walking in.
That's an NYPD room. That was colors.
Oh, is it? Oh my God. That's cool. Wow. I love those old clocks and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is where he's paranoid, right? Which is probably, it was probably more true than not. Yeah, I was gonna say.
There were guys like that.
Oh,
Well, all of
yeah,
our phones they weren't bugged, but they were recorded. Everything was a recorded line
yeah,
at the district stations. Everything was recorded. So you never, you were cognizant of that. But as far as being bugged,
Keith Movie Geek is on here, and he what do you say? Oh, all hail to the super cops, the legendary Gordon Parks, Shaft, Lorenzo Sample Jr., fresh from writing episodes of Batman 1966 series starring the great Ron Lieberman, fabulous character actor. Guys, and I saw a clip of Ron. Is it Liebman or Lieberman? It's Liebman, right?
I think it's Liebman.
I think it's Lieberman. He won a Tony for Angels in America on Broadway, like in 1990 something. And he just recently died, like in 2018. Yeah,
He was a good actor. He was also in that movie with Robert Redford, The Hot Rock.
That's right. Yeah.
he was Rachel's dad, I believe.
That's right.
In Friends.
And so the other guy who played, so Liebman, he played Greenberg, right?
Yeah,
and Hans was played by David Selby. Is it Selby? Selsby, I think. He's still acting today. I looked him up. He's like 80-some years old. He's still doing roles, man.
He looks like the guy that played Scorpio in Dirty Harry.
With his eyes, with his eyebrows up like that. Yeah, absolutely.
I love
that guy. Almost looks like Bob Newhart.
He was good in the movie, this guy.
See, we had captains, right, that got sent to like the station just like this. And it was always a problem, right? There was just always a controversy, man. And, force shootings and crazy stuff going on. And captains would get sent there, to clean it up, right?
Yep.
And then
you go to the captain's office, though, like on my job, if you knocked on a commanding officer's door and walked in there, within seconds, a lieutenant would pull you aside and go,
"Oh, yeah.
Ever go in there again?" And when I first came on the job, you never saw the commanding officer or the executive officer, the number 2 banana. You never saw them. Then with Comstat and stuff, they became more accountable. Then they started wearing their uniforms. But back in the day, these guys were in suits and you barely saw them.
Huh. And so I was at the same time, I was cop by day and stand-up comedian by night, right? So I was doing stand-up comedy. And so actually the sheriff had a re-election. And then so they had 1,000 people in the showroom, the department members, right? And I was supposed to go to West Hollywood, and I got a call at midnight. And this guy goes, "I don't know, but tomorrow," and he canceled. He's stuck on a plane somewhere. But the sheriff said that you would fill in.
Uh-oh.
It kind of came in and out for a second.
Yeah, Cliff is frozen.
And some author, and it's me, and everybody in the department is looking at me up there next to the sheriff and his wife, and then of course I go up and do my comedy, right? So man, I used to go over people's heads all the time, man. I would go right to the undersheriff. I go right in his office, man, and so people hated that. But you know what? I pulled that all the time,
If you were getting called in the captain's office, you did something very wrong. Something very bad was going to happen. I remember, when we were brand new, just coming out of the academy, there was like 12 of us that got assigned to District 5. And that was like the busiest, most violent, blah, 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 district in the city. And our captain was this no nonsense Marine veteran. He was in Vietnam, and he always had his Marine Corps coffee mug and a cigarette in his hand. And he was great, though. He was very fair. And our first day, we're in the conference room. He walks in. We all snap up to attention. He's like, "Sit down. God, enough of that shit." And he's like, "All right, what's going to fuck your careers?" And we're all like, I'm not doing this right, not doing that right. He said, "Nope, booze and broads every time."
Yeah.
And I still gave that speech to recruits that came to the district, but I would add social media to that.
Well,
Especially today. Yeah.
Yes.
My wife was a background investigator for the last 3 or 4 years that we were on. And man, they went into everybody's background, man. And they would have these guys, what the heck? He's got a flag of this. And oh my God, they would be out of the job,
But booze and romance and cops, oh boy, that's a cocktail for disaster. But
I wish you would have told me that before I started and got in all that trouble.
But getting back to the captain, or
You
one
could have
time,
helped me. Yeah.
I'm on overtime like I was every day when I was on field training. It's like 11 in the morning, and I'm just getting copies made in the front office. And he just happened to be walking by, and he's like, and I'm like, "Good morning, sir." And I throw him a salute. And he's like, "Good morning, Patrick. How are you today?" And I'm like, he knows my name. He knows my first name. Oh
Yeah.
my God, what did I do wrong? I must have done something wrong, but that was him. He got to know everybody. He was probably one of the best captains. I was blessed. I had really good captains.
I had good captains too. I remember when I got transferred, I was telling you guys, so the new captain would pull us in, with 2 or 3 of us were on it. Okay, you guys, yeah, I did get the phone call on you guys, but you know what? You can start fresh here and this and that. But hey, before we do the next clip, and I'm going to ask Vic about this too. It's 2906. I called it the knock. Play this. I think it's where the guys, they knock to get into a place, and they do a specific knock to get these guys to open up. I don't know if Martin, do you have that clip ready to roll? It's 2906 is the clip called the knock. Here we go. And I'm going to ask you specifically, Vic, about this. And then Patrick, if you can chime in. But yeah. Yeah, so these guys are at the door. I forgot what they were doing. Were they off duty or undercover at the time?
Probably off duty. They were doing all kinds of
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
off
That's
duty.
right. Because then one guy was hiding. Yeah, Greenberg was hiding in the thing in the hallway. And so he does a crazy knock. So they answer the door. Right. Oh, and they're doing that Pepsi Generation thing, right? They're singing that song. And so, hey, the guy opens the door for him, and that's when they kick it in and they go and make this drug arrest, or they see what's going on in there. But those guys were funny, man. I can just imagine doing this. I knew a few people who did crazy stuff like this. So the reason I want to ask you about this, so a friend of mine, Mark DeMayo, you said you kind of, he's on another podcast once in a while called Off the Cuff about the NYPD detective. Runs it. And so Mark, when he does his comedy routine, he says he would go down to these housing projects, right? Because you know how cops knock, right? Bop, 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 let us in, So he would do this crazy knock, like a rap song. And these guys would always open the door, right? So, and that's how he would get in, right? He goes, hey, Mark, go pick this guy up on a warrant. He's in the, because they knew he was going to do the knock, right? So he said, I was getting requests all over the bureau, hey, Mark, we need you to come over here and do the knock, man. Because he knew they would open the door for him because it was a crazy rap song, right? That, there wasn't a cop knock. Can you relate to that at all, Vic?
Yeah, I mean, bad guy, cops are creatures of habit, right? Like you said, and like we'll come up there with the nightstick or a fist, boom, 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 open up. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of these spots, especially if they're pitching out of an apartment or something, there is a knock. I remember when I worked in narcotics up in the Heights, you would have guys in the street that would have car alarms wired into their apartments. That if they saw us outside, they'd start pushing. You'd have lookouts outside that would just start hitting the car alarms that were inside the apartments. And then we'd hit apartments and you find, hot food on the table. You know what I mean? They run right out of the apartment because they had a buzzer hooked up to the apartment.
Smart. Wow. That's crazy. How about you, Pat? Did you have any dealings with, different ways of getting into a place or getting people to open the door?
Well, you were always trying to be as
creative
as possible. Like we wanted one guy for something. We knew he was in there, but I don't think there was an active warrant. I don't know. For whatever reason, we needed him to come out. We couldn't boot the door. So I actually called the city tow truck. And
oh my God.
I'm like, I had him respond like a block away, and I had my cop change into civilian clothes. I said, you're going to drive up there, have the guy show you how to do this. You're going to turn on the lights. And I tell you what, some people are so attached to their cars, especially this guy was a drug dealer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, their car is everything. And, it was some fancy schmancy like BMW. It's all, pimped out. And I said, put it on there, start moving that thing. I bet that guy will be out here in 2 seconds. Sure as shit. We're hiding like in the bushes and this guy is sprinting. It's like, what are you doing with my car? It's like, draw it down. I was like, hey, congratulations, you get to go to jail. How's that?
Yeah, I want to acknowledge Keith Movie Geek again. This guy, so he said Ron is known to today's audiences as one of the voices from the hit FX comedy Archer, starring Ron's wife, Jessica Walter. I didn't know he was married to her, Jessica Walter.
But
He had
yeah,
the pleasure, and he had the pleasure of meeting David Selby on a film that was made for the Sci-Fi Channel called Larva.
Hmm.
Thank you, Keith, movie geek.
but that was one of the more
Keith
creative.
Movie is one of the two halves of Pop Culture Minefield.
Oh, okay, good, great, thanks,
Yeah,
Keith. That's awesome. I'll
He's
keep that
a
in the
resident encyclopedia about pop culture.
Man, he is. Oh, no wonder. No wonder the show's so successful, man. He knows a lot of stuff, man.
Yes.
And
So to get in, I mean, most of the time, that's what our expandable baton was for. It's like, use your door knocker, kid. And it's like that's as good as they were, because they didn't work on people usually.
No, that's right. We just make them mad. Yeah.
Those were our door knockers, and our window smashers were the expandables.
Yeah. Hey, so there's another clip coming up, and this is one of these guys. I think they assigned him to like parking control in front of the precinct. And it was that guy, the guy that played the sergeant, right? He basically says, "These sons of bitches went by the book," and then they got all these cars lined up to be towed, right? Yeah, there they are. Yeah, the captain comes in and he sees all these cars blocking the street. What the heck's going on here? Everything's in bedlam, right? And these guys, you assigned us to take care of street violations, and we're doing it. Oh man,
that's an NYPD precinct, just with the way the stairs and the colors.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man. Oh yeah. Who's that? And you know what? They would use scenes like this, like in Barney Miller. So it must have been accurate to these stations. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, parking is a premium in an NYPD precinct because they're usually in a crowded neighborhood, right? Usually the station house isn't in the middle of nowhere. It's in the belly of the beast of some precinct. And parking is at a premium. Yeah. So I was a car guy, right? I'm always bringing in stolen cars into the station house and vouchering them, and you'd put it in the lot. Within a day, one of the lieutenants would come up to you, get that goddamn stolen car out of here and get it to the pound. I don't care if you road tow it or you drive it out to the pound. So if these guys were doing what they showed in the movie, not only, first off, they probably would get dragged into the locker room by the veterans and smacked around.
Oh, yeah. Smacked around, yeah.
And so you know what? You like vouchering cars so much, we're going to send you to the Whitestone Pound, where the NYPD's got this tremendous pound out in Whitestone, Queens. It's in the flight path of LaGuardia Airport. So you have to pause every 30 seconds because a plane is roaring overhead. Yeah. And it's hundreds of acres. And you have this lost thing of feral cats that live under the abandoned cars, and when they'll jump out and fucking attack your legs. And these like crow's nest booths out there. Where you want to work at the pound, you want to vouch your cars, they'll stick you out there.
Oh
so
man,
the has Siberias all over the place where you breaking balls like that, they'll take care of you.
Oh yeah, I was a stolen car guy too. We call them G rides, right? Stolen cars, man. That was my thing, man. I just loved them. That's all I looked for. I did. Yeah. This reminds me when they said go by the book. So I had my training officer. He was really good, and they wanted to shut him down. So they put him on burglary reports. You're just going to take the burglary reports in the city, So he was taking burglary reports. Well, so what he would do is he started following up on these cases, So he went there to take the report, and then did you see? Oh, you saw him, really? Oh, you think it's the kid 2 doors down? And then he would start following up, and he's in chases and he's in shootings, and so they did it to take him out of the field, but all he did was create more chaos, man.
Right back in the field.
Yeah, he was making more burglary arrests on this detail, and they finally, oh man! But I couldn't have had a better training officer than this guy, man. He was awesome. He was amazing. But that reminded me of that, just going by the book, because they tried to shut him. So he was going by the book. Okay, I'll take burglary reports, and then I'm following up. So yeah, let's see what else we got. What's the next scene here? We got. Oh wait! The neighborhood. I don't know. Let's see. Let's go to the 4710, the IAD call, right? The NAP commission. Oh, it was a fake call. He calls like saying he's calling the IAD, but he didn't. But he just wanted to make sure these guys weren't undercover to get him, right? That was funny. Right. And then the captain slams the phone down. I just wanted to make sure you guys weren't part of the deal. Yeah, that's it. So like you were saying earlier, Vic, they call them integrity checks or whatever. They they leave cars with dope in them or money, and these guys IAB. We had IAB, Internal Affairs Bureau, and they'd be around the corner. They're watching. They thought a guy might be dirty or something.
I remember I had about 7 or 8 years on the job. I was driving the sergeant, and these two females come up to us with a shopping cart. They were pretending they were homeless, and we found this shotgun. I said, what? We jump out of the car. There's a shotgun under a blanket. Where do you ladies live? Oh, we live in the homeless shelter, but their shoes were wrong. And two homeless women that find a shotgun aren't going to bring it to the cops.
No.
Yes.
So I said, listen, we're going to voucher it. Have your lieutenant come to the station house and pick it up. And they just gave me a dirty look and walked away. I vouchered the shotgun. An hour and a half, 2 hours later, someone from IEB came, checked the voucher, and took the shotgun. So yeah, they would do what's called integrity tests.
Yeah, they did that. They would have a car and they would call it in as blocking or abandoned, and then they would have a bunch of money or dope in the back seat, and crazy, yeah. But I never got caught in it. I never got tested by that. Oh, you know what? I did get tested for a while. They did the what they call the PP test, right? So they would could randomly pulled in for a drug test, and so because remember I got the transfer in, and we sued over those transfers. So for like 10 years, I probably got pulled in like 8 or 9 times for these PP tests, right? They call them, the P police are here, they call them the P police. So then they would take a sample and test you and everything. So it's funny. So I had like 8 or 9 of these tests, right? So I was working with a guy, and he goes, man, I've never had a test on me. I go, yeah, well, you probably didn't sue the department over your transfer either.
Yeah, it was supposed to be random with us.
Random, right? Yeah.
And the way it worked with us is every morning the department would test 20 or 30 people.
Yeah.
And it would come up on a teletype, and it would get sent out to your command.
Yeah.
And you had to get to the Health Service Division in Queens. The building was called Lefrak Plaza. You had to get there by the end of the day, by midnight. If you did not piss in a cup by midnight, and they didn't care if you were hunting Osama bin Laden. Yeah. Whatever you were doing, you had to drop if you were on duty, like if you were on vacation and took the day off or something and you didn't get there, fine. But if you were working, if you didn't pee in a cup by midnight, you were fired. They didn't want to hear it. That was it. You were out of a job.
Yeah. For us, the random drug screens, like we were just saying, isn't so random. It's surprising how if somebody was on vacation in Jamaica, their first night back, hey, guess what? You got to go piss in a cup.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
What a coincidence. Yeah. But my favorite drug screen test was we had a guy that we worked with, not very bright, nice guy, but just not very smart. And we could tell he was on the devil's lettuce every now and then. And he was having troubles with his old lady, and he's going to work, and the sergeant's office, phone rings, and the guy is like, Sarge is like, okay, all right. So he calls internal affairs. His girlfriend called and said, hey, he's smoking weed.
Wow.
So call up internal affairs. It's like, all right, he gets a drug test when he comes in. So he comes in, Sarge gives him the drug test, and he's moping with a long face. He's like, hey, what's wrong, man? And it's like, I'm not going to pass this. And it's like, what? Well, I smoked like 2 days ago on my off days, but that shit stays in your system a long time. And I'm like, yeah, it does. So he's driving. He knows he's going to get fired. So he's driving but you still got to try. So he's driving to go do the drug test at the hospital. And one of the officers on the front desk gets a call. And it's like, I don't know if this is my imagination or what's going on, but I could swear there was a police officer in a marked patrol car with the window down. I was at a red light. I think he was smoking a marijuana cigarette. He was blazing up on the way to the drug test. He said, he comes back and he says, I lit that fucker up. Yeah. And I'm just like,
it's out of control.
What? Oh my God. What do you just figure? I'm going to go out. I might as well go out with,
he said, I'm going out in a blaze. And I'm like, yeah.
Literally, he did. Yeah.
Well, with us, they have urinals, 10 urinals in a row, right? So when I was a rookie, like going into the academy, they line you up. Above every urinal was a mirror at a 45-degree angle above your head, and a supervisor stepped right behind you. And if he couldn't look over your shoulder and watch you piss into the cup, he'd look at the mirror.
Oh,
okay. And the reason they did that was they would catch guys with prosthetic penises.
They bring their own
French's mustard bottle taped under the armpit with a hose, a tube running in. So they were so paranoid about it that, I mean, and the females got watched when they would go in with a female supervisor. And in the history of the NYPD, there's only one person that failed the drug test and kept their job, and it was a female cop in the 80s, and she tested positive for cocaine. And they were, that's it. You're out of a job. Her story was that she didn't do coke, but her boyfriend did, and he enjoyed fellatio.
Oh,
and her story was, after ingesting, she tested positive for cocaine, and she's the only NYPD member that was able to keep her job.
Wow. That's a good defense. I like that. Yeah.
That's crazy. But I remember when I took the physical for the job, part of the physical was a drug test.
Yeah.
And it was an older lady. Well, old to me back then. Yeah, I was 30. So she was probably my age now in her 50s. And she gives me the cup and she gives me all the instructions, and I'm going to close the door, and she's walking into this bathroom with me. And I'm like, is this private or not private? What's going on? She says, I have to stand next to you while you go. She literally stood next to me as I was peeing into the cup.
That's wrong. Yeah. I see. We had they for us, and I'm sure people got around it, but they would come in and color the water in the bowl in the tank.
Yep.
So you couldn't dip into it or whatever. But besides that, they didn't come and watch you actually.
That was the only time that happened. When I did a drug test, any other time, they give you a cup, you go in the bathroom, then you hand it off. But it was temperature sensitive. So you couldn't have some.
You couldn't have cold water. Yeah.
Right. If you had somebody else's, pee or something like that. But yeah. And when I was done, I looked at her and I said, you do this 8 hours a day? She said, sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God.
Sometimes off duty. I don't know.
Can you imagine that? Like, that's your job.
I know. What do you do, Grandma, for a living?
Yeah.
Well,
you got to know, what did they do to give this assignment, right?
Yeah, really.
They wouldn't get dumped. Those are guys that worked at the health service division. You know the way it is. There's certain guys or girls, they want steady tours, and they don't care how they get it or what they got to do for those steady tours.
That's true. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. I like this next one. I got some history on this is where 5625, these guys are they get called Batman and Robin by the community, right? Because they commandeer a bus to let these to get away from these hitmen, right? That were there to shoot them. There it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, they found out there was hitmen waiting for them, I think, right?
Yeah, they had a contract out on them.
Yeah, so so they commandeer this bus. This was crazy. Vic, do you have any experience with people commandeering public safety
we should do stuff like that. Yeah, we would commandeer gypsy cabs, ambulances, buses. Yeah, sometimes, to do surveillance on somebody or to get the drop on somebody. Yeah, we would do that. But in this movie, you've got a black drug gang that's subcontracting a hit to the mafia.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Like,
no.
The mob did work hand in hand with a lot of black gangs in the heroin trade in the 70s, but they weren't going to get involved in killing 2 NYPD cops.
No way.
Too much heat.
Yeah. It's funny. This reminded me, not to interrupt you, Patrick, but this reminded me of me in the same TO, Marv Washington, and we were working and we were trying to get this guy who was selling dope in front of Martin Luther King Hospital, and he had a spot where you couldn't get close to him. So my TO says, "Oh no, we're gonna get this guy." So we stopped this lady, and he told her, "Hey, what they call it, posse comitatus or whatever." He said, "We need to have you. We're going to hide in your back seat. We just pull up to the front of the hospital there. We're going to jump out on this guy." So that's what we did, and we got him with a bunch of dope. But it was funny. We're in this private car. We left our squad car and got in this lady's back seat, and she drove us up to the thing. It was funny, but it worked. Yeah.
The thing with this movie is that they're trying to be undercover and they're wearing their hats throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
The first thing NYPD members do is take their hat that sits in the radio car.
Correct. Yeah.
Unless there's like a big boss there. Like, you're supposed to wear it, but no one wears it, if that makes any sense.
I like their tennis shoes that they were wearing. They were wearing the like Chuck Taylors. They were wearing Converse, like basketball shoes with their uniforms.
We had a guy. This guy, he had worked Vice, and so anyways, he started making these gambling house arrests, right? Because what he would do is he would walk into these places, and they would keep with their slips and stuff, and he would arrest them because they knew Vice worked undercover, so they didn't care if a guy was in uniform. So he would walk in uniform and make these make these arrests because he knew they weren't going to bat an eye on that, because they knew that street cops didn't make, vice
Right.
arrests, right? It was just kind of funny. I go, oh, I can't believe that. Crazy. All right, we got another one. How about this one? This is 118 wait, let me make sure I'm in order here. Yeah. Hiller sets up to get he tries to set him up to get him killed by the Hayes brothers. I forgot which one was Hiller. Hiller was the detective. It wasn't the captain. It was
No, I don't think it was lieutenant.
no. I forgot who Hiller was.
Is that Pat
He was
Hangle?
It might have been. Maybe we'll know from this clip here. Oh yeah, that guy. He was IA or something, right? Yeah, I think he was
Okay.
IAD. Oh yeah. Oh, and he has some undercover guys. He's trying to set these guys up. Yeah, that was yeah. Oh man. I don't know. We had we had some good guys, I guess, that went to IAB, we call it, but man, most of us, they were really our arch enemies, man. We did not cooperate with them whatsoever. Yeah. Was it a lot of animosity between the regular patrol guys, Vic and Pat, between the regular guys? And did you have Pat? Did you guys have an internal affairs division separately, or did they have to do two hats?
It was separate, and there's a criminal and a rule violation separation.
Yeah, we had internal criminal affairs, and then we had internal.
Yes, you would have detectives and bosses that were in charge of if they were investigating a department member who was allegedly violating some kind of crime, violating the law, that they're doing something criminal. And then there was the rule violation side, which would be sergeants and bosses. Okay.
I got questioned by the internal criminal.
Well, I had my own seat after a while,
So this, and they played dirty pool, right? So
well, it's
Yates,
funny.
let me tell you, Yates, we're not internal affairs. I just want you to know that we work with the district attorney. We file cases on you. That's what we do. Do you got that straight? Oh yeah, I got it straight.
No, my first dealing with internal affairs was I was with another copper and we had to use force, and the criminal accused us of battery to a prisoner. So I was on FMLA. My first son was born. It was like 1:00 in the morning, and I'm feeding my son. I always took the night shifts. He was a little baby, and my phone's ringing, and I'm like, "Hi, yeah, this is Detective blah blah blah. You have to respond to room blah 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 internal affairs." And I'm like, I'm on FMLA. Well, you're being accused of blah blah blah. I said, "Come and arrest me. If you got enough probable cause to arrest me, you would have already been down here. You wouldn't be calling me to you."
Yeah.
So I said, "Hey, I'm off of FMLA in 3 weeks. Whatever. See me then." So I got called up there with my buddy. We're knocking on the door. It's like 1 or 2 in the morning. And then we're like, okay, well, she ain't answering. So we went over to the rules and procedures side, and they're like, yeah, it's 2. She usually takes a nap for a couple hours right now. It's like, well, she can go eat a dick. Fuck her. It's like, we're done. So we walk away, and it's like, well, what happened, guys? And it's like, she was sleeping. Oh, okay. So the next week, same thing. And it's like, no, we're not going. Sergeant's looking at us. What do you mean you're not going? Well, she's sleeping right now. If they want to arrest us, come to the district, come to our house, come and arrest us. I got no problem with that, because we knew we didn't do anything wrong.
Very adversarial.
Then what happened was, I got promoted to sergeant. Well, when you're in charge of active cops that are doing a lot of arresting in specialty units, which was what I was doing, I had my own seat up there. I remember one time in the criminal side, this detective that was fairly new, I had no idea how she was up there. It's like, well, what about X, Y, and Z? And I'm just like, no, absolutely not. And she's like, well, I could compel you to make a statement over on the rules and reg side. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Well, I can do that. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. Compel me. And she's like, well, I'm going to talk to my boss. So she disappeared for 5 minutes, come back. Now, are you going to cooperate? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I said, compel me. Because I know, again, I didn't do anything wrong. My guys didn't. They were accusing my guys of something. And I'm like, am I buying a car right now? You have to keep on running back and forth to your boss. I said, what's wrong with you? I said, you know what? I'm a cop too. I do know how this goes, and I have certain rights too. So if you're going to charge me or one of my guys, go right ahead. Otherwise, I'm leaving. Bye-bye. So yeah, I could tell you one story after another. Then they wanted me up there. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
Hell no. I would never do that either.
But
oh my goodness.
you do need good investigators.
You need good people there.
You do. And it's a necessary thing. You need an internal affairs division.
Otherwise, you can't have everybody. No, you got to have some honest people over there.
Absolutely. But I've had a ton of dealings. I was under investigation 6 months before I retired. I was on the evening news. And I thought I was going to lose my job.
Wow.
Talk about a rotten feeling.
Was it a high? Was it something in the press? Case
what happened was this is during the Trump era. Babies in cages on the border. Blah blah blah. And ICE came to our district to arrest some guy that was in the country illegally for 11 years. He was arrested 9 times in 11 years. Wow. And he was on probation for a gun offense, and he broke his probation. So they're like, okay. So ICE came up actually from Chicago. The big boss came from Chicago. And this guy, they tracked him down. They pulled him over. And he's in a Suburban with his family. And he jumps in the back seat with the kids. And I'm like, okay, this is a coward. And they're flagging down my guys. My cops were just driving by. Per SOP, if any law enforcement flags us down and requests our help, we have to help them. So their first thing they do is call for a boss. So I go over there and I'm like, I'm talking to the Chicago boss. I said, nobody's breaking windows. Nobody's pulling anybody out by their earlobes. And I'm like, you know what? If he comes out of his own fruition, great. You go take him and we're done. So this guy's wife was calling the local activists in the newspaper. And before I know it, now it is a circus. Finally, the guy comes out, handcuff him, done. It's all over with. So the angry mob is going banana cakes. The media's there. And I go to the district station. I go to my captain. I'm like, hey, just so you know, boss, there's going to be a very angry mob at our front counter wanting to make, yeah, that's fine. They can make a complaint. So they come to the front counter and he says, O'Donnell, take care of the complaint. And I'm like, they're complaining about me, sir. And everybody that was there. He's, oh, okay. I guess you can't take that one. I'm like, no, I can't. But to make a long story short, my police chief did not back me at all. The news, the mayor, the sheriff called us urban terrorists led by Sergeant O'Donnell. I'm sitting up at internal affairs and I'm like, what rule did I violate? You didn't. What law did I break? You didn't. So why in the flying F am I here right now? And they're like rolling their eyes. And I'm just like, oh my God. You people are ridiculous. That was one instance where a body cam was great. My guys were ultra professional. Everybody did everything by the numbers. It was, again, you have our sheriff calling us urban terrorists. My chief just being quiet and just letting it happen. It's like, don't worry, Pat, this will blow over. And I'm like, I retire in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm on the evening news. I'm in the newspaper. There's my picture. And I'm like, this sucks. But that's politics, baby. In internal affairs.
Oh, yeah.
They got to do what they got to do.
Yep, that's true. So true. Yeah. They tried to set these guys up. I can see how that happened. Let's see. I got another clip here. It's who is this? How about the 123 where they want a grand jury request. They're requesting the grand jury, right? Because they're basically being accused of stealing. And I don't think that they don't want them to go in before the grand jury, obviously, because these guys are going to raise all sorts of issues. I think that's what this is about. Oh, these guys are riding along. I forgot. Pull right over here and stop. I'm trying to remember the scene if you guys remember it.
This is when they kill the Hayes brothers.
Okay, this is it. Yeah, it goes bad. That's right. Yeah, and this goes south and it's a deadly force shooting, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And
nobody covered them. That's right.
I have this one, and then when there's the confusion about who the
Yeah, no, you were
prisoners
right. Yeah,
are.
I forgot. I skipped over that one. You were right, Martin. Thank you. Yeah, and go right into that grand jury request after that because I think they're on death studio.
No,
Or
I
whatever.
don't have the one for the.
Oh, okay. You don't need
Nigeria.
it because this makes this kind of depicts everything I needed. This is great.
Now, I Googled this,
Yeah.
and there's some conjecture, and who knows what the truth is, that the two cops assassinated these guys. Yeah, it
read
didn't
that
play
too.
out. Yeah, so who knows where the truth lies.
You know,
Yeah.
here's a story that I found out about Greenberg. He had been arrested several times after his NYPD career and had
Yes.
served jail time. But here's something that in addition to all that, there was a retired NYPD captain that was president of one of his companies that was shot to death leaving his Brooklyn office.
Oh
Hmm.
man.
And at the time that article was written, something X amount of years ago, that homicide has never been solved.
Interesting.
Wow.
So that, yeah, there's a lot of and then Hans was busted for marijuana on vacation in the Bahamas.
Yes. And
But
Oh
he
my
didn't lose
God.
his job,
he
which
was
I
demoted.
find, yeah,
was-
that's odd because in
Yeah.
the NYPD, anything with drugs, that's it, you're gone.
Yeah. Maybe he had made enough connections or something, and he was kind of protected. Maybe could be two competing factions.
I don't
right?
have an answer for that. I just,
Yeah.
as per reading, doing
Yeah,
research
yeah.
for this.
Let's go. Oh man, that was crazy. That's I never like. Did either of you guys ever work undercover where it was hairy like that? I mean, get caught in a situation.
Cars, but nothing ever really,
Yeah.
No,
didn't go bad.
no. For
Yeah.
me as a cop, we had a tavern car. We called it. It was a licensed premise car, where you'd go into taverns and you went in plain clothes.
Gotcha.
And either you're going after a bad guy that frequents the place, or you're going after the tavern. Because they're shady.
Yeah.
And I would fill in doing that. And then when I got promoted to sergeant, I started my own tavern car at a different district that I got, sent to. So I pitched it to my lieutenant. She pitched it to the captains. Like, yeah, sounds great. So I was constantly having my cops go in plain clothes, or I would go with them, or I'd be the cover outside in uniform. It all depended on what we were doing. But yeah, most of the time it was just fun. That was a good time. And I was in charge of a special car on day shift for a while. And we had a problem with carjackings and like thefts from autos, where people were leaving their keys in the ignition when they were gassing up at a row of gas stations in our district. And then it graduated to carjackings. So I put a female officer that was like 5'2", 100 pounds, soaking wet, out with an old beat up like Honda Accord or something like that, just hoping that somebody tried to jack her. And I played the clerk. I was with the clerk behind the glass.
Man, that could be bad.
Oh
man.
Yeah, she was a tough cookie, man. But I had plenty of cover in the area.
Yeah.
Nobody was getting out of there.
Wow. Hey Vic, I was going to ask you a question. Sometimes we've been in Manhattan where all of a sudden, I hear the siren coming, screaming around the corner, and it's a yellow taxi. Does NYPD have like?
Yeah, the old days, there was a unit. Actually, if you ever saw the movie with Sylvester Stallone, Nighthawks.
Yeah.
The street crime unit turned out of Randall's Island, which that's another story. It's this island beneath the Triborough Bridge between Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Manhattan. And that was like the old decoy unit. They were around when I was around. And yes, we had taxi cabs, yellow checkered cabs, but you could tell it was an NYPD car because on the medallion and the light, there would be an R in the numbers. So if you saw the R, you knew it was street crime.
That's awesome. I always want to ask that question because that was quite a few years ago that I saw that. So maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately, they disbanded that unit. There's a couple of questionable shootings that they unfortunately disbanded the unit. Actually, on my podcast, I just had a guy on that worked in that unit.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I gotta ask somebody someday about that because it was odd. I just heard the siren, then I see this taxi screaming by. Wow, wow, wow! I go, what? Something going on there. It must be an undercover unit or something. But that's interesting. Oh, that's crazy. Let's see. I think we have one more. Let's do this last clip. Is the one where they're not 100% sure who is the prisoner, right? Who's the prisoner here? It's NAP. And there was a NAP group and then an IAD group. And then I said, then promoted. I don't know what happened with that.
This is funny.
Yeah.
I like this part. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, I love that. It's not 100% clear who is the prisoner here.
Yeah.
You think I'm under arrest? No, you're under arrest. What do you mean? Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, that's right.
Old man. He was in like every Clint Eastwood movie.
Yes, he was.
Right.
Yep.
You're so right about that. Oh man, this could actually happen, man. I tell you.
He was always angry. Yeah.
He had thicker eyebrows than me.
Yeah.
Wow. That is awesome, man. These guys sure made a career for themselves. I don't know, I wonder how much. I'm sure there were guys. Sometimes though things happen stranger than truth is stranger than fiction, man. I tell some stories to people that couldn't have happened. I know where I worked in South Central, things happen. I can't even tell anybody this because they won't believe me. There's no way that this happens. I remember that's funny. These guys. Somebody got promoted, I think, after this or something. That's why I don't know. I had that in my notes, but
they get promoted to detective after this.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Get the gold shield, they called it, right? Back to you guys. Yeah.
That's disingenuous because when you get promoted, right? I was expecting, my parents are coming down,
Yeah.
You show up in uniform, right? And you dress uniform and you get some schmuck from the ceremonial unit. So in the NYPD, we promote in bulk. So it could be 40 detectives getting promoted, 60 sergeants getting promoted, 70 lieutenant. Like we promote like 200 at a time, right? You go down to Bond Police Plaza and you dress uniform. First thing in the morning, the schmuck from the ceremonial unit will go, you need a new belt. You need a haircut. You need a new pair of shoes, right? You got an hour. So you go to the equipment section or there's a barber around the corner. You get cleaned up, right?
Geez.
Then you come back and you hand them, there's a bunch of civilians behind a counter and you hand them your old police shield, right? They take your shield, they put it in a mold to make sure it's not a duplicate or a dupe. They put it in this mold and the mold determines if it's real or not. Then they take the shield out and they throw it in a cardboard box and hand you your new shield. And it's the craziest thing. Like, and I saw a guy get pulled off the line because his shield was a dupe. He either lost his shield or he had it in a safety deposit box because you can lose 30 vacation days and put on a year probation for losing. That's a heavy hit, losing something like a gun, a shield, or an ID card.
Yeah.
So guys are paranoid. A lot of guys will buy a dupe and wear their dupe.
That's what I heard.
And that's how you get caught because they forget. And then when you go to get promoted, they put it in this thing, a mold.
Oh, okay.
And then they take it out. They just throw it in a box and they hand you your new one. And then you go out and then, you're in the big, the big conference room and your family's there. But we promote like 200 people at a time.
I heard that people had dupes and they would carry those instead of the real one.
Oh, yeah.
In case they lost it or,
Absolutely.
That's so cool. That
I did. I had a dupe. I had.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah. God. I got replicas for my regular badge and my sergeant badge. Absolutely. Well, and most of us used them for off duty. You would just keep your regular badge pinned to your uniform.
Yeah.
And then the badge that you would have off duty, that would be your duplicate one. So you're not constantly going back and forth.
So speaking of the badge, I don't have my book. So when I wrote my book, Deputy, right? So I had my two badges, one from Livingston County and then one from the LA Sheriff's Department on it. So the book's on Amazon and being sold. I get an official letter from the LA Sheriff's Legal Department, cease and desist, or we're going to take you to court. Wow. Because the badge is copyrighted and you're using this image without permission. So it was okay for me as a real retiree of the LA Sheriff's Department writing a book about myself in the Sheriff's Department. It was okay for me to make up a fake badge that said California Deputy or whatever. It's okay to use that. No problem. But to use the actual badge, no, you can't do that. I could depict a fake one. I just couldn't believe it. And everything. You should, a couple of people have written books and they actually just changed the font and they changed something on the star, and they got around it. But I was like so mad. I go, screw that. I mean, I just made up a fake badge on, some software and I use that. No trouble. And then, man, people were like offering me big money for the original covers. I want the original one. Crazy. I just can't believe. But they weren't even allowing. You couldn't even use that on certain TV shows. A person on the department, he wrote, and he was in 10/8 was a TV show that we had, and man, they had to blur out the badge and everything, and oh my God, because the sheriff sued the company, and
probably as a result of this movie, the NYPD created the movie TV unit.
Yeah, we had that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think as a result of this movie, and then you've got it's like a floating crap game where you've got a team of cops that respond. If they're filming at 4 a.m. in Brooklyn, those guys go out there, they make sure that they can park. No one's screwing around with the stars, and then not an interference for the movie set.
Yeah. I did a lot of extra work on Bosch. And so a lot of those guys were LAPD guys, were actual LAPD cops they use in a lot of the scenes. But I was in a coffee shop scene, but it was a great experience. I was in 2 or 3. I didn't even know about Michael Connelly's series until I had posted a picture of myself doing it, and this guy wrote, "I love Michael Connelly in the whole series." Yeah, but it was fun, man. And Titus Weller, he's a good guy, just a real down to earth guy. So it was a good experience. But I think that was the end of our scene of the IAD NAP commission, and then. When did they do away with that? Well, there was no more NAP commission when you were on, right, Vic?
No, there was no NAP commission, but it was like Hiroshima because there was the fallout blowing around when I got hired because, you had a lot of paranoid guys. I mean,
it's funny. Yeah.
It's like 10 years, 15 years later, you still had guys around from that time period that just thought differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they looked at, you go to an I don't know how it is now, but like, in my time, when you're a rookie cop, you go to a precinct, there's 200 cops in there. You've got the veterans, they treat you like you're from outer space. Like they don't talk to you, they ignore you, they're not really going to help you. And who treated you worse were the younger cops that had been there 6 months to 5 years before you. They had it all figured out. They were like the older brother or the bully in the schoolyard that would mock you. You don't know how to do this? It's like, motherfucker, you were doing the same thing 6 months ago. You know what I mean? There was a lot of paranoia. Internal affairs was not. If you went to IEB, you were a rat. Your career was over. Especially if you went as a cop or as a detective, that was it. You lost your NYPD privileges. You couldn't go to a cop bar and drink, or your brother wouldn't talk to you. It changed under the Giuliani administration because they realized, like Patrick said, you want talent in there. You want objective people. You want people that know what they're doing. So what they did is, if you work in a specialized unit, you're a detective or a supervisor, and you get promoted. So if I'm a detective, I get promoted to sergeant, or sergeant narcotics gets promoted to lieutenant. You don't stay.
Right.
They put you back in patrol for a year, 6 months to a year. Then you can apply to go back. So what the NYPD did was they set it up like the NFL Combine or the NFL Draft. When you go for your OCCB interview, there's going to be somebody there. There's going to be a couple of guys from supervisors from Vice, narcotics, auto crime division, and now IEB. And IEB gets the first round pick. So I was a detective in auto crime, right? Say I got promoted and I'm a sergeant. I'm trying to get back into OCCB. I would have definitely gotten chosen for IEB. Why? Because I know insurance fraud.
Yes.
So, a cop that burns his car or something like that, like we're grabbing this guy. So what you would do is you would do a year or two in IEB, and then they would give you a choice assignment. You would get to pick where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And you weren't looked upon as a rat because you were drafted.
Yeah, they knew you didn't have a choice, really, right?
You didn't have a choice, right? And a lot of the guys I worked with in auto crime, the supervisors, had done their 6 months or a year or 2 years in IEB, and they were invaluable because they knew how they thought. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and they saw things coming that you wouldn't, even though, I got 15 years on the job. I've seen it all. Like, no, this is exactly how they're looking at this. So it was invaluable.
That's important. Yeah. Pat, how about for you? So when we got promoted, it's like starting over. I had to go back in the jail for a year. It's like crazy. And I hated it, but you got to get promoted, So how about for you?
We went back to nights, but I got promoted.
Something I would have liked. Yeah.
I was still on late shift when I got promoted. I had 7 years on as a cop. Then I got promoted to sergeant, and I was still on late shift, and my entire class was slated to go days, which was like the holy grail. It's like, oh my God, I can go back to days. Yeah, I can go to day shift. Because when we were at the academy, like the first day, they're like, you'll never see daylight. It'll be 50 years before you see day shift. Get used to working at night. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess so. But they were pushing so many classes through that actually seniority, you could build up seniority pretty quick. So I had to make the choice. It's like, oh, do I want to do this? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I promote to sergeant, and I started at the bottom of their seniority list. There was 2 seniority lists. There was one that was the coppers and detectives. They were on the same seniority list. And then supervisors were sergeants and above. Everything was based on seniority. And I was just sent back to late. I was already on late shift, and all my classmates were going days. I'd see them like in passing when I was getting off of work. They were coming to work, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of jealous. That's kind of nice. But yeah, and as far as the internal affairs things goes, you were more or less guaranteed your spot. If you worked internal affairs for like a year or 2 years or whatever the minimum was, and it differed by administrations, you wanted to be on the SWAT team, you got it. You want to be in communications, hey, if that's your bag. If you want to be on the motorcycles, you want to be in gangs, whatever, it's yours.
Wow.
As long as you pay your
dues are going
toll.
there.
Yeah, as long as you pay the toll of being up at internal affairs. Now that has slowed down. And like I said, referenced before, I was working one time, and one of my buddies that I was a copper with calls me, and he says, dude, you're coming up to IED. And I'm like, I am not. He says, dude, your file with your picture on it is in the captain's in basket. And
You're
that
on the
means
list.
you're coming. And I'm just like, son of a biscuit. So I call a friend of mine that I was a cop with on late shift 100 years ago. And I'm like, Carrie Ann, she was a lieutenant up at internal affairs, and she pulled a lot of weight. She wanted to be an assistant chief. And I mean, I remember the days of, trolling through alleys, going after hookers with her, she was a great cop. And I'm like, Carrie Ann, I hear from a little bird that I'm being drafted. And she's like, you'll love it up here. And I'm like, no, I won't. I said, you know what? And she said, I'll let you pick whatever hours you want. As long as you get your work done, I don't care when you work. That was one of the big benefits too. Was like, the world was your oyster. You could work whenever you wanted. As long as you put in the hours and you got your work done, they didn't care, which violated all the union contracts, but they were their own little entity. And I'm like, Carrie Ann, you need good people up there. I am not your guy. Whenever I get in as a sergeant in a district, you had to do internal affairs stuff. You had to investigate the cops for citizen complaints or whatever. I hate doing that. I can't stand doing that. That's just not me. We need good people. Go with God. Have a great time. I'm not your guy. So she pulled me, and I'm like, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're lucky you had that relationship with her, because had you not, you probably would have went.
Absolutely. But the three of us can all agree that it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
That's what this job is.
It's like, and everywhere though. Yeah. If you can develop relationships. Yeah.
If you were a good, hardworking cop and your heart was in the right place, most of the time the boss saw that. And, and years down the road, it might, pay off in spades. Or, you were friends, or, hey, that was your partner. Or like I said, you're trolling around at 3:00 in the morning, running after hookers or going to that shooting or whatever. I was just amazed that she could smoke a cigarette, eat a bag of Doritos, and have a bottle of Mountain Dew and juggle all that and operate the radio at the same time.
Yep, that's talent.
Like a cop. Yeah. And I'm like, God damn, how do you do that, Carrie?
If you can roll to a big scene like that and never spill your coffee, I mean, that is talent. Absolutely. Hey, Vic, I was going to ask you, at One Police Plaza, there's nobody works out of there, right? As far as patrol or anything, right? Or
no, that's the administrative
headquarters
of everything. And I mean, it's like a 20-story, I'm probably wrong, but it's like a 20-story building. It was built in the 1970s, and it's a fortress to get into. And I mean, there's every unit specialized, it's basically policy is run from that building.
Administration. Yeah.
Every ass kisser in the world is in there.
Yeah, right. If you work down there, man, that's like a stain on your career.
No, I mean, there's good people that work in
Of
there. And
course,
Jesus,
yeah,
one of my childhood friends who I actually worked with, and then later became a detective and a sergeant, worked in the fingerprint unit. So I mean, that was invaluable to me when I needed prints to be lined up or fed into that. What is it? The safest machine.
Yeah.
It's like, again, you build relationships with people and they go to different places, and then it's like, oh, you need something
guy over there.
in a case. Like, I'll call my friend in the fingerprint section, or call my friend over in ballistics.
Oh yeah, that's right. At one time, we were legally allowed to, like, when we worked at the Universal City Walk, we could get some VIP passes. So people would call us up, my family's coming into town. I'll get you some VIP front of the line passes. And oh man, we were like the kings then. I mean, everybody was
guys that work in Midtown. Those are the guys that work in Midtown North, Midtown South, or like the 17th precinct. They call it the Gold Coast. Those are the guys that are going to be able to get you David Letterman tickets. Those are the guys, what I mean? Or what's another big show that was it was on? It's those are the guys. Saturday Night Live. You know what I mean? Those are the people that rub elbows, and that's why everybody wants to work there, because in Manhattan and Midtown specifically, because you're rubbing elbows with these power brokers, and then the next thing you do your 20 years and you're director of security at some company.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been a great career.
Or driving some billionaire. You know what I mean? You're flying all over the place with the guy.
We did New Year's Eve this past year and we have and we were at the Hilton at 6th and 53rd. Man, there must have been 30 cops just at the Hilton, probably just assigned there. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of people that were assigned around Manhattan during New Year's.
Oh, it's probably the New Year's Eve detail. I don't know this to be true, but I'm just taking a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
They probably assigned between 3,000 and 5,000 NYPD members down there.
Oh, wow.
So we had a package deal at Victor's Cafe, a Cuban place, between 6th and 7th on 52nd. And so we walked down to 52nd, man. They had people were trying to get to where they were trying to get to Broadway or 7th, to see the ball drop, and this is like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And so we get to the corner, go, hey, you can't go through here. You got to go up to 50th if you're going to cross. You can't get to the restaurant from there. So then, all right, so we'll walk up to 57th, and we get to 57th. Yeah, we're going to 52nd to Victor's Cafe. Well, why would they send you here? I don't know. They said we had to come through here to get over to 7th and go down that way. No, that ain't right. Is the restaurant on 52nd? Yeah, well, then go down to 52nd. So
you think that's bad? When you're working one of those uniform details in Manhattan, especially New Year's Eve, you got to remember something. Shit runs downhill at 1 PP. Like, the police commission is not going to want to hear from whatever chief that had that detail that something went wrong.
Yeah.
And you think that you're getting run around? You got to post with, you're standing on a corner with 8 cops. Some inspector will run over, move these fucking barriers, move them over here. You'll move them over there. 10 seconds later, a chief will come over. What are all these goddamn barriers? I'm telling you, that's why cops hide. You know what I mean? That's why you see guys in doorways and shit, because they just land on you and they're rerouting you. It's just a clusterfuck down there.
So I didn't have my badge with me, right? I didn't bring my badge like an idiot, because I didn't think there was going to be an issue somewhere. And so my wife and I were in this barricade on 52nd down in the restaurants like 200 yards away, and they're not letting anybody go. And so finally, of course, I had to go with my wife. My wife said, screw this. And she throws the barrier aside, and we just started walking. Hey, we're retired LA sheriff. Get out of the way. We walked. I thought we were going to get arrested, but they just let us walk. So we made it. So it was crazy. But, here I would have said, I'm LA sheriff. Where's your tin? I don't have it. Yeah, right. But we made it to the restaurant. I asked other people because they had the package. Did you guys have trouble getting here? Oh, yeah, we had trouble. We had trouble getting here.
Don't make it easy for you.
So next year we decided if we go back to New York, we're just going to stay in the Hilton right where we're staying. We're not leaving the property, Oh, my goodness. But yeah, that was fun times. In the end, it was all fun and games, And then there would turn out to be a shooting like 1 block over on 7th and right there on 52nd, I think. Oh, my God. Or it was, the guy with the machete. It was crazy. Oh, my goodness. But anyways, we love New York. We love Manhattan. We love it for like 5 days because we like Broadway shows and stuff. Yeah. And then we're ready to go back to Florida. Yeah. Unbelievable. So let's see. Anything more about the movie, guys? Any more background? You had a lot of background, Vic. Did you look into any more stuff on any trivia?
I did. So Greenberg, after all his controversy, before he gets arrested, they transfer him from Brooklyn to the 5-2 precinct in the Bronx, which is a great station house. But I'm guessing as a Brooklyn guy, that was punishment. That's part of the highway therapy.
Yeah.
And I also sent you a newspaper article that Rob Liebman spoke to the New York Post, and he said that Black Muslims came to the MGM offices on 6th Avenue and basically, according to the article, strong-armed the production company
to be used, right?
To be used as security and to provide food.
Huh.
Now, 2 years before that movie was filmed, there was an NYPD cop that was shot and killed in a Harlem mosque. NYPD detective Randy Jurgensen wrote a wonderful book called Circle of Six, and it's about the investigation. And there was a man that was charged in that homicide who eventually, I'm not going to say his name. A hung jury was with the first one with the cop killing, and then he was acquitted. And according to NYPD lore, that guy played the black lieutenant at the end of the movie who becomes their captain, like they hit him with the garbage can.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that to be true, but here's the thing. I checked the Internet Movie Database. There is no listing for the actor that played the role in that movie. And according to like NYPD websites and things that I see, that guy is the same. I don't know it to be true, but I'm going by what I'm reading and hearing, from the grapevine of the NYPD.
All indications would say that would be true if you couldn't find this guy in IMDb.
Which is unusual.
Yeah,
because
that's unusual.
Part in a movie, and even if you're not in the Screen Actors Guild, they still list you.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything's on there. All my stuff is on there. And but you know what? If they were smart, they would have done that from the beginning. They would have said, "Hey, we're going to use you guys in some spots over here." They would have hired. Hey, we need some background or whatever. I would have had some window insurance, right? And hired these guys.
Okay, and I got a list what the movie got right. Okay.
Okay.
So you got the green and white patrol cars, which that was before my time. We had gone to I love the blues, but they had the green and white, the station houses, the detective squads, all right. It looked like it was filmed in the police academy gym. Under the Coney Island boardwalk is just as scuzzy and disgusting in the movie as it is now. If you go underneath there, you might find someone's arm or another body part.
Wow.
You want to go under the boardwalk at no matter what the song says. You don't want to go under the boardwalk at Coney Island. The freak show is fun. They didn't show that. So every year in the NYPD, you get sent out there either the 4th of July, Memorial Day, or Labor Day, and there's no place to hide. So as great as the freak show is, or the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, you're looking for lost children, because someone lost their kid. It's a circus out there. And I got a funny story. No NYPD cop wears their bulletproof vest working one of these details. I know you're supposed to, but especially if you're in organized crime, no one's wearing their vest. My last year in the department, I get sent out to Coney Island, and this inspector walks up to me and he shoves his finger right in my chest. And he goes, "Detective Ferrari, where is your bulletproof vest?" So, when the truth don't set you free, you lie. I go, "Boss, it's in the trunk of my car."
Of course it is.
"I want you back at the temporary headquarters vehicle within 45 minutes, and I want to see your vest." I go, "You got it, boss." So my partner's laughing. He goes, "So what are you going to do now?" And we're not Brooklyn guys, I don't know Brooklyn cops. I mean, the NYPD is that big. So let's go to the Coney Island precinct. I walk into the precinct and there's a cop answering the phones. We call it the TS operator, young cop. I go, "Hey kid, stand up." Cause I got like 18, 19 years on the job. Like, I'm an old man. I go, "Stand up." He stands up, my height, my weight. I go, "Where's your bulletproof vest?" He goes, "It's in my locker." I go, "Go get it." He goes, "Why?" I go, "You want to go to the auto crime school?" He goes, "Yeah." So the auto crime division, we had a week-long school that everybody wanted to attend because A, you could learn stuff about stolen cars, and B, to become a sergeant, you needed a certain amount of college credits. So if you went to the auto crime school, it was 5 days and they gave you like 4 credits. So everybody, and you couldn't get into it unless you knew somebody in auto crime. So the kid runs downstairs, comes back with the vest. I'm in the station house pulling off my uniform shirt. I put on the vest. I go, "I'll be back in 45 minutes. I go and see the inspector. He goes, "Oh, all right. You got your vest. Good." He goes, "All right. Carry on." I said, "Okay." Went back to the station house, gave the kid his bulletproof vest, and I got him into the school.
Beautiful. That's a good story. Hey, we're gonna wrap up, guys. So, any final words from? How about you, Patrick? Any final words? I want to thank you ahead of time, both you guys, for this. Made a great show. Really appreciate it.
Well, I think, it was kind of cool to see like the way they presented themselves, the uniforms, the 6-shooter without a safety holster. I mean, there was like the gunslinger look going on. Yeah, I like that. That seemed pretty authentic. And like the vest thing, nobody's wearing a vest, but back then they didn't have them, right?
No, that's right.
Yeah, they didn't have vests. And I loved all the cigar smoking.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
like
because I love a good cigar. So I was just like, yeah. And we can't smoke in the building, but in the garage or wherever, we're always, there'd be some debriefing with cigars, and that was always a good time. So yeah, all in all, it was a 70s movie, and yeah, why not? It was good. It was good.
Really good. Any final words, Vic, before we're going to close up?
I do 5 to 10 podcast interviews a week. This was by far one of the most enjoyable. First off, I love talking with cops. All right.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
1970 cop movies. It doesn't get any better than this. I'd like to ask the chief. I'd like to thank the chief. I'd like to thank you, Cliff. I'd like to thank you, Patrick, for inviting me on and thinking of me to get me on the show. And Chief, if you're listening, you should have the same 3 guys put the same band back together, and we should review Cops and Robbers with Joe Bologna and Cliff Foreman. It's another 1970s NYPD movie. It's about a couple of cops that rip off bearer bonds and get involved with the mafia.
That'd
Fantastic.
Be fun.
That's great.
I'm down. That'd be awesome.
All right. That's it, guys. Thank you for listening and watching. Martin, I will let you end the show, and this was great fun.
Those sons of bitches.
Ma, I'm doing a show.